Hello everybody, I hope everyone's having a really good day again. Well, I'm going to continue the series that we've been doing here on this channel, 43 players in 43 days, going through all the players on Essendon's list and looking at what we expect out of them going into 2026. Are they going to improve going into 2026? Are they going to play in a different position? Are they going to be in a different role? What is their value to the team going to be? I've done a few players already and we're up to the next one. So today we're going to have a look at our ruckman, Vigo Visentini. Well, one of our ruckmen anyway, Vigo Visentini. He is 20 years old. He obviously plays in the ruck. He was picked up in the rookie draft in 2024. He's 203 centimetres, which is 6'8", so he's a big boy. And he played a couple of games last year. It's obviously too early to say if the investment has paid off. I will say, though, I think picking up ruckman through the rookie draft or with a very late draft pick or through the pre-season draft or through the SSP period, as a lot of clubs want to do these days, is actually a pretty good way to do it. And that's because they're such late developers and there's so many examples of players who were picked up in this fashion who have gone on to be really good players. Lloyd Meek is a really good example at Hawthorn. So Vigo is not a big investment for us in that sense. We didn't use a high draft pick on him. Getting him in the rookie draft is not exactly like picking someone up, with a top 10 pick in the national draft. So, he's got time on his side and he showed a little bit last year in the couple of games he played. He was rated from the two games that he did play as Essendon's 29th best player. Now, that's only from two games. He was subbed out in one of those games. And is he our 29th best player? He's probably in the 30s, I guess, but look, that's just from two games. Take it for what you will. In the two games that he played, he averaged 12.5 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 2.5 clearances, 2 marks, and 12.5 hitouts. The second game he got subbed off, so it's a bit better, or a bit more appropriate looking at the first game that he played against Fremantle, where he had 15 disposals, 2 tackles, and 17 hitouts, including a very memorable tackle that Brad Scott brought to attention in the press conference after the game, saying he was really happy with his attack on the ball, and it certainly wouldn't be the last game that he played. So he did play that extra game after that. I will say that I think in the two games he played, he did kind of get monstered a little bit. Look, he was up against Luke Jackson, one of the not just a really good player for Fremantle, but one of the very best players in the competition. And no one's expecting Vigo to be able to match it with Luke Jackson in his first, to be able to, play at the level that Luke Jackson could. And he was up against Kieran Briggs in the next game. And he was probably out-muscled a little bit, which is not surprising. Look, a 20-year-old ruckman is probably going to need a little bit more time before he's able to physically compete against the big boys. He's got the height on his side, but height is only one part of the equation. The ruck is probably the most physical part of the ground, and unless you put the weight on over 2 or 3 or even more pre-seasons, it's going to be very difficult for you. Often you don't see ruckmen reach their peak until the age of 24, 25, 26, where they really start to establish themselves in the side. He's 20 years old. So, look, I would anticipate that he's still going to be playing in the reserves next year. He might break through for a couple of senior games here and there. But assuming we have no injuries, and of course we always do, but working on the assumption of no injuries, I find it doubtful that he would get into the team as a ruckman on merit. I think he would need to work his way in and get in on form somehow to get into the side, assuming that, there were no injuries. Look, I think we'll start the season most likely with Blackiston in the ruck with Peter Wright assisting. There is some possibility that Vigo could be a second ruckman with the absence of Nick Bryan in those first few weeks, but I think it'll probably be Blackiston and Wright. And then assuming that Brad Scott wants to go with 2 ruckmen, which he tends to want to do, I've noticed that it tends to be a thing that Brad Scott would prefer, having the 2 ruckmen in the side. I suspect it will probably be Bryan and Blackiston for the remainder of the season. But Vigo's best chance is probably if one of those players goes down. But even if they do, then Peter Wright probably then steps into that role and helps out a little bit. We've also got Cale Girine in the reserves, who can be a bit of a makeshift ruckman, even though he's more nominally a forward. So, in my opinion, he's probably still not quite ready yet, but that's not to underscore the massive potential that he has. You could see in that game against Fremantle, and for those that remember the game, he did show quite a bit right? And you can't judge him for being, beaten by Luke Jackson. That's unfair. But he did show quite a bit. And that's just an observational thing. It's a bit difficult to make a comparison of his VFL form because when you're playing against that lower standard in the VFL, it's hard to sort of extrapolate how that would go in the AFL. But when we did get that couple of games that we saw, I thought he did okay. His strengths are his physicality, and this is something he's going to have to use to his benefit. And he's got a very, very strong competitive edge. So what do I think are the key questions, the key things that we're going to have to look at for Vigo going into 2026? Well, the first key question I've got is, can he actually break into the senior side on merit if there are no injuries? Right, now, I doubt it at this stage. I still think he's too young. But if he did, I mean, that would be a great sign. If he was to actually get into the senior side on form, all right, then at the age of 20, that would be absolutely magnificent. I'm not quite sure he's up to it this year. I hope he is. Because I think he's a long-term player for us. But that's the question. Can he actually get into the senior side, not because of injury, but due to his form? The second question I've got, and I think this is an important one, and this is probably more for his VFL form, or more for his, the time he plays in the VFL, and he will be playing VFL football this year, no doubt, is can he add goal kicking to his game? He's 203 centimetres, so I haven't really noticed that this is a part of his game, and it's not always a part of the game for ruckman. But the very, very good ruckman, who are in the side exclusively as a ruckman, like your Max Gawn, who is, he's there as a ruckman, can still go forward and kick goals and be a very, very good goal kicker. This is not really a string that he's been able to add to his bow. I mean, he did kick 3 goals in the VFL against Southport. That was in 2004 that he kicked those 3 goals in a match. He actually had 3 games in 2004 where he kicked multiple goals. He kicked a 3, a 2 and a 2. But in 2005, the year just completed, he only kicked 2 goals in the VFL for the entire season. But is this something that he can actually add to his bow and make part of his game? Because it's not that much a part of Nick Bryan's game either, really. It was part of Draper's game, definitely. So we've lost a ruckman in Draper that, can kick goals. So can Vigo add that to his game? The third key point I've got on Vigo is, can he continue to put on weight and develop? And this is the key point. I don't expect him to be a key player in the senior side this year. He might break in for 1 or 2 sides, but at the age of 20, we need to be patient with him, and we need to be patient more so with ruckman than other players, because ruckmen are very different to a midfielder. Midfielders can often come in and be very, very good straight away. That is extremely unlikely with ruckman. So can he continue to put on that weight and develop his physicality to be that really, really good player that we hope he can be in a couple of years' time? So that is the analysis for Vigo Visentini. What do you think? What do you think are the key things we should be looking at for Vigo this year? Do you expect that he will be playing senior football? And I'm making the assumption of no injuries, because obviously if a couple of key ruckmen goes down, he's playing in the senior side. Remembering, of course, that we have lost a couple of ruckmen this year. We've lost Goldstein and Draper, so we're down to only 3 others, 4 if you include Vigo. So he may actually get his chance, but is he able to actually get into the side unless he's covering for an injured player? Is he able to get in on merit? And what do you expect out of him this year? Do you agree with me, or are there some things that I've missed? Well, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as we continue the series, 43 players in 43 days. Have a great day, and as always, go Bombers!